Great. So that was from the Nigerian aspect. We have Angola. Can you tell us something brief about the student activities in Angola?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, class. Good morning, future engineer. I'm not listening. No breakfast. I need to listen to your voice more. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Oh. You see? You win something from me. Yeah? Yes, my name is Lenda Antonio. I'm representing the Angola section. So I'm going to talk now about Angola section ESP. Right now we are doing our best about ESP in Angola. That's why we are here. We have many university about petroleum engineer, but about the chapter we have only Jean Piaget at the moment to represent Angola for right now in this conference. So I think we are bringing the message from Angola about the petroleum in the ESP, because we need to expand the ESP in Angola, not also, that's why we are here. We are trying to our best to provide the ESP section Angola section, sorry. So right now we have a good result about ESP Angola section. So about the petroleum in Angola, we have many companies, manpowers and operations company. We are trying to give us the conference to transmit the information about the ESP in Angola. So they need to see where is ESP, or what is ESP, and why the importance to have a DSP in Angola. So right now we have a good result. Right now we have a good communication. So we are here about that, our communication with that company to translate our experience we have in any partners like Nigeria, like Ghana, like Kenya, everything like that, etc., etc. So I'm very happy here together with you, and my team Angola is there. So I'd like to this conference start on the safety, and be safe, and to finish this conference. Thank you so much. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the gentleman who won a gift, I'll see you after so that at least we can share. So, yeah, or you give me another one. Okay. So, next, I would want something brief from Uganda. Let's hear from the Uganda. And do you sometimes prefer if you blend the English with is it Portuguese? Which? English? Which country speaks Portuguese? Angola. Oh, you should have added a bit of it so that maybe we are learning.
All right, thank you. I bring greetings from Uganda. My name is Macklin Agaba, and I'm the Student Liaison Officer. So I'll talk something brief about our SPE as regards to the student section. So as the Uganda section, we have 6 chapters, student chapters, having Mbarara University of Science and Technology being our youngest registered chapter. And our oldest are 3 of the chapters, which make 10 years, meaning we are as old as 10 years as SPE Uganda. We have been involved in different conferences and exhibitions where we talk more about SPE and have these chapters come and register. So we are still registering and having more chapters on board. Our chapters do individual activities. They go and talk to the primary schools, to the secondary schools, where they distribute some strips. That is energy for me. And then they also do some charity work. I think these are some of the common activities that are carried out with the rest of the chapters. And yeah, I think that's what I have to say. And we are very, very happy to be a part of this event. Thank you, Ghana section.
Thank you very much. And there's one thing that she told me yesterday, that the next year, Student Congress, Uganda are going to host it. So this is like, I'm sure it's like the World Cup host bidding rounds. They've already thrown in their bid. So if you are in an African country here and you want to challenge, maybe you can also bring out your proposal. They have a very nice proposal for us. And we have our ARD here. She says she has heard you. And further discussions is going to continue from here. And I would love to go to the Uganda. I'm sure you all join me. Yeah, it is a nice place. Okay, next. Done. So we'll be starting the program officially. And before that, we have a short video for all of us. Before the video, since we have started officially, let me give a short safety briefing. So we are not expecting a drill today. So in a situation of a fire, it's a real situation. When an emergency situation is a real situation. And we have our ushers here who direct us to the master station. If you want to use the washroom or the restroom, when you descend down the staircase, facing the big banner, on the left is the female, and on the right is the male. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
I don't think I can be walking about again, because the videographers have told me that I need to concentrate at this position. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the SPE Africa Students Congress 2023. This is a 3-day program. It's running from today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. In the evening, on Wednesday, there will be a dinner and an awards event. So we would want all of us to participate from today till Wednesday and probably Thursday when we all leave. Moving on, I would like to introduce some guests. Please, if I mention your name, you give us a wave. We have Samantha Armstrong, who is the Senior Manager, the Membership Programs from SPE International. We have Lou Rodriguez, the Energy Education Manager, SPE International. We have Amma Sapon, ENI, who is the ENI Ghana. She's also the SPE Ghana Diversity DNI Deputy Chair. We have Mr. David Ampefo, CEO, Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber. Thank you, sir. We have Mr. Benjamin Boache, Africa Center for Energy Policy Executive Director. We have Mr. Africanus Mensah, CEO, Amaja Oil Limited. We have Mr. Victor Kofi Sunata, General Manager Engineering, GMPC. We have Mr. Koku Boaten, Director, Local Content, Petroleum Commission. We have Mr. Harry Mensah, Director of Operations, Petroleum Commission. We have Mr. Edward Apia Brafo, Corporate Affairs Manager, Petroleum Commission. We have Mrs. Ogogu Ifio. Am I right? Ogogu Ifio. Okay. So we call her OG by short, so I'm used to the OG. She's the Africa Regional Director, SPE. We have Mr. Theo Eshuren, MD, Modec Ghana Limited. We have Miss Eve Mondu Kilonzi. Am I right? Sorry? Thank you. Oh, I'm right. Thank you. So she's the project engineer from Kenya. We have Faith Abado, MPSG, Training and Competency Coordinator. Emmanuel Kwesi Awete Ametepe. Oh, sorry. Emmanuel Kwesi Ametepe, Modec Maintenance and Reliability Engineer. We have Mame Abba Kweji Abedu. Is it right? Okay. She's with JNGC Ghana. Ghana Gas. Right. We have Ishmael Aka, Executive Secretary, Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. So I'm going to pause here. The list is very long. As the program continues, I'm going to continue with our guest list. So we'll continue with the next video. So if the video is already, I'll continue with my list. And please, the student, I hope you are taking note. All the guests who are waving their hands, please, after this program or during the coffee break, please get at least a complimentary card. You don't know where it's going to end tomorrow. When I say tomorrow, not Tuesday. I mean in the future. Hello? Yeah. So when I say tomorrow is not tomorrow, Tuesday, but in the future. So if I'm moving on, we have Mr. Ola Davis, who is the former SPE Africa Regional Activities Manager. Mr. Ola Davis, give us a wave. We have Professor Richard Amorin, who is the faculty advisor for University of Ghana. Please give us a wave. Hey, University of Mines and Technology, sorry. And he was the one who gave us the overview about the student chapter activities in Ghana. And we have Mark, who is the student liaison officer for Uganda. Please give us a wave. We have Shibere, who is the student liaison officer for Nigerian Council. Give us a wave. We have, so our video is ready now. Okay, so let's move on with this. As I said, the list is very long. You can see me flipping my sheets front and back. I have quite a long list here, but we'll proceed. So during my introduction, I left one person out, who is the Ghana section chairperson. Is in the person of Dr. Reverson Opon.
But when you are going to start asking myself how 10 years, how 20 years in the industry is going to look like. But most of the conferences organized in Ghana, especially aside the global world, focus on the experts, the professionals, with less attention to the students. That is why we thought it wise as SPE Africa, with the empowerment of our ARD, OJ, to make sure that we organize this conference, and it's live streaming for those who are out of this hall to also benefit from this. So we share our knowledge, we share our worry together. I pray and I hope that you're going to maximize the efforts you put in place. You see me sweating all over around. I can't even sit down because I'm so excited to see this day happen. So on behalf of SPE Africa, I know that the African Regional Director is going to speak, but I want to welcome everybody from all over the world, from Dubai, from London, from Angola, from Tanzania, I think the last student to come today was from Tanzania at 4:30. So we have not slept the whole day at all. But we are here making sure that everything happens. We thank you all for making time to come, and we hope that the best will come of this Congress. And I also want to sincerely thank Modek. I think Fifi mentioned the dinner awards. The awards night, it was fully sponsored by Modek, and happy that the CEO is here. I know at the right time, all the sponsors' names we're going to mention, but I want to stand and thank you so much, sir. We appreciate you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much and have fun.
Thank you very much, Section Chair. I think I forgot one thing with him. He's also the manager for commercial at Ghana Gas. Thank you very much, Dr. Riverson. Moving on, we'll take a keynote speech from Mrs. Ogogu Ifio, Director, SPE Africa Region. Let's welcome her.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I apologize, I came a little bit late this morning. My flight was unfortunately denied, and we had to wait for a long time to get reassigned to a separate flight. So that delayed me quite a bit. I missed some of the proceedings in the morning. But I'm happy to be here. It fills me with great pride to be here finally today. Like Dr. Riverson said, we've been looking forward to this day for such a long time, and we're happy that it's here. I have a few prepared speech words that I want to share with the students today, if you just permit me to go ahead to do so. I would first like to stand with Riverson to thank our numerous sponsors and all our visitors and everyone who has come from far and wide to be part of this event today. I'm really honored, and I'm very proud to have this opportunity to speak to you. This is one of the most important issues of our time, which is the security and the sustainability of energy in Africa. As the world's population has been growing, the demand for energy also has been growing. And it's important that we find ways to meet the demand while ensuring both security and sustainability of the energy sources. As students and as professionals in the petroleum, we are uniquely positioned to help to tackle these challenges. And I want to encourage us to embrace the opportunities that lie ahead. First of all, let's consider some of the challenges. Dr. Riverson mentioned something about the future. What are the challenges facing us? One of it is that our current energy systems are reliant on fossil fuels, and these are finite. And not only that, they also contribute to some greenhouse issues. Not only that, the infrastructure is vulnerable to attacks, to aging, to natural disasters, and even cyber attacks these days. To add to this, Africa is in a position of great wealth. And with respect to natural resources, as of this year, Africa is still a significant producer and exporter of oil, with many countries heavily dependent on the revenues from oil for economic growth. Nigeria is one of them, and so is Ghana. However, the drive towards net zero emissions means that the world desires to have a more diverse energy source, which includes fossil fuels and also non-fossil fuel sources, to ensure that we have a renewable source of energy that we need. So in this context, Africa's energy ecosystem is actually quite complex. On one hand, we have abundant resources, renewable resources like solar, wind, hydro power, which could potentially help us to diversify our energy source. But on the other hand, many African countries lack enough infrastructure, financing, and technical expertise needed to harness these resources effectively and to make it readily and cheaply available to our teeming demographics and our young population. Moreover, the energy transition will have a very significant impact on African countries, which could potentially lose significant portions of their revenues to the global demand for oil if it decreases significantly. So any transition to net zero should require careful planning and coordination, including investment in alternative sources of energy and infrastructure, jobs, training, programs, and as much support as possible to the affected communities. Now let us consider what these challenges bring. They also bring opportunities. The energy transition presents exciting prospects for innovation, research, development. Renewable energy sources such as the ones I mentioned before, they are alternatives, and with the use of new technologies such as energy storage, smart grids, and carbon capture and storage, they will help us manage and distribute energy more efficiently and sustainably. As students and young professionals, you have the chance to be at the forefront of these developments and to shape the future of the industry in Africa as a whole. African oil and gas is still and increases to be an investment magnet to new discoveries and positions the continent as a guarantor of energy security in the emerging markets as Africa seeks to also enter the 21st century. I urge you to seize these opportunities with enthusiasm and dedication. Keep yourselves informed about the latest research and technology in the energy sector and be open to new ideas and approaches. Collaborate with other professionals and stakeholders to build your networks and partnerships that can help drive progress. Take initiative and be proactive in seeking the new projects and opportunities to contribute your skills and expertise. But as you work to create a more secure and sustainable energy future for Africa, always be mindful of the impact, of the social impact, the broader social impacts of your activities. We must all work together to ensure that the energy systems are secure, sustainable, and also equitable. In closing, I want to encourage you to remain hopeful and optimistic about the future of energy. It's not a mistake that you are here. You are in the right place. Despite the challenges that we face, I firmly believe that we have the knowledge, the skills, the talent, and the resources to create a better world for ourselves and future generations of Africans. You are the future of the energy industry, and I look forward to seeing all the amazing things that are going to come out from you in years to come. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the best in the program.
Thank you very much, ARD. And to the students, I just want to believe that just from this speech, you have some questions already. Okay, so we moving on. Next, I will call on Samantha Armstrong, the Senior Manager, Member Programs, to give us a speech from SPE International.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say how absolutely honored I am to be here today. We came over from Dubai yesterday. My role with SPE is I'm the Senior Manager for Member Programs. I'm sure that you're all familiar with members of my team, including James Whitaker and Yun, who I believe you've all worked with in the past over various programs. And I'm accompanied as well with Lou Jean, who's been mentioned, who runs our Energy for Me program. Obviously, I used to work with Ola, but he left us. But he's back especially for you guys today. Here he is. And I also wanted to introduce you to Robert Zlokauer, who's there in the corner. He actually joined SPE on Tuesday this week to replace Ola, so we've thrown him right at the deep end. He's he's going to be based in our London office. So one thing I just wanted to say is, whilst we are SPE International, we are here to service you. As students, I think one of my favorite things working with SPE is working with you guys, working with our young members and seeing the progress that you bring, the enthusiasm. It's the most worthwhile thing working with SPE. And, we are the administration side of things for you guys to get out there, do the activities, host amazing events like these. We're so proud to be able to support you in your journey to support this amazing industry. Quick word about SPE itself. I've had the pleasure recently to work with OG, our wonderful regional director, and the SPE board on the new strategy that SPE has rolled out. The board worked very hard on this for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. It was a lot of work. And our board members took it so very seriously. And we have to remember that our board members, they are volunteers too. And they're senior members of the industry, and they dedicate so much of their time and effort into supporting you guys, because they realize, you heard from OG, they realize more than anyone that you guys are the future of this industry. And one of the things, you can go on spe.org and you can read the whole strategy and the missions and objectives of SPE, and you can really see that young members and students, i.e. everyone in this room, our strategy is focused around you guys and making sure that SPE is the right vehicle to support you in all of your future endeavors. It's a very exciting time for SPE, and I don't know how familiar you are with Mark Rubin, who is a CEO who was with SPE for 20 years. He has recently retired, and Mark was with SPE for 20 years, and when he arrived, he came in as a younger version of himself, and he brought in so many exciting changes to SPE. I feel that him working with all of our presidents and board members over the last 20 years really allowed SPE to become the international, truly global organization that it is today, providing a network for all of you guys to work with our students and our young members and our professionals in Asia Pacific, in Europe, in India, all across the world, in America as well, of course. So we have said farewell to him, and we have a new CEO coming in called Simon Seaton. He'll be joining us at the end of July, and you can see his information if you have a look at JPT. And again, as on the staff side, we're really excited. There was a search team that put a huge amount of effort into making sure that they found the right leader to work closely with our board, who had industry experience, who had some non-for-profit experience, and most importantly, he's been a member of SPE for 25 years. So he's been on the journey that you guys are going through now, and I think that's really important for us to take SPE forward, to really build on the future. And hopefully he's going to be bringing some brand new ideas, brand new vision, in exactly the same way that Mark Rubin did 20 years ago, 25 years ago, or however long ago it was. So with that, I'd just like to say that we'll be here until Wednesday. If you have any questions about SPE or any questions about the programs, or you need any contacts from us, please don't hesitate to ask Robert or Lugene or myself. As OG has said, one thing is that we're so excited about is that the Student Congress has come to Ghana for the first time. It's absolutely brilliant. And, I know that they have been mentioned, but Riverson, the amount of work and effort and personal time and investment that he's put in to making this happen is just amazing. It really is amazing. And I also wanted to thank Fifi, because he's put a huge amount of effort in as well. He picked us up in style yesterday. He's delivered us here and there. He's been absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much, guys. And of course, a massive thank you to OG, who really has been a fantastic leader for the young members and students in Africa over her term as regional director. And we're going to be very sorry to see you. We've got one more year. We've got you for one more year. So let's make it a good one. All right? So with that, I just want to wish you an amazing Congress. Make the most of it. Make the most of being together. We've got an exciting SPC, we've got the exciting Petrobol, and you've got some fantastic leaders from your region. So make the most of them and make the most of each other. Good luck and have a wonderful, wonderful Congress.
Thank you very much, Samantha. And based on the speech, please, I'd like us to clap once again for the Ghana section, led by Dr. Riverson Upon, for putting together this great program, with also a great support from our ARD. And most importantly, our sponsors. So Doc mentioned about MODEC. As the program continues, I'll be mentioning some of them. So we have Ghana Gas and Africa Center for Energy Policy. So next, we have another short video on SPE. With number plate GC5826Z. GC5826Z. Please, if it's your car, kindly see Philip the back for an important information. Back to the promised land. All will be happy. We are continuing with our program. The next on our activity is the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Ms. Ruba Babosele from Ghana Gas. So, sorry, to be moderated by Amma Sapon, actually, SPE Ghana Deputy DNI Chair. She is also with ENI Ghana. So let's welcome Amma Sapon as she takes over and continue with the panel discussions. Please, let's continue to clap for her. And before I hand over the microphone to her, I want to say that it's really nice in here in terms of the blend of male and female. It's fantastic. It's maybe some years back you would have seen 20 males, 2 females, or 10 males, 1 female. Now, I think let's clap for the ladies as well. They've done a very good job.
Thank you. I think the program has been going on very well so far. I'm going to take my seat. Before I introduce my distinguished speakers, I think today's conversation is one that personally I'm very passionate about. The energy transition in Ghana, on a broader scale, energy transition in Africa, specifically tailored towards our students here today. I think in the early parts of the conversation, we were wondering and discussing, students here have diverse backgrounds, oil and gas, but there's one thing that has been on our minds, and it is that what is the energy transition going to do to our current capacity building efforts in Africa and in Ghana? So I think that this conversation is going to throw so much light on energy transition, focused on capacity building, focused on you students here today, and I hope that you will make the most of this conversation. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce my speakers for today. I'll start with Mr. Victor Sunu Atta, GM Engineering for GMPC. Kindly join me on stage. And the next I have is Mr. Kweku Boateng, Director, Local Content for Petroleum Commission. Third on the list is Mr. Benjamin Boache, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy. Kindly give him a round of applause. And then we also have, I'd like to introduce Mr. Theophilus Ishring, Managing Director for MODEC Production Services, Ghana. And then I also have Dr. Ishmael Aka, Executive Secretary, Public Utilities and Regulation Commission, Ghana. Last but not least, Mr. David Ampofo, CEO of Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber. Okay, gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you. I do have to admit that our panel guest speakers are not as diverse as I would have loved it to be, but I believe that I bring a little bit of that diversity to this discussion today. So I'm going to go straight to the discussion. Basically, we have been hearing of this buzzword, energy transition, in recent times. We are aware of how much there's been a lot of attention drawn to Africa and the role that we could play as a continent towards the energy transition. So I'm going to direct my first question to Mr. Victor Sunu. Why do you think Africa's just energy transition should be a priority?
Energy transition, I started hearing of it in 1998. When they told us that all is getting finished, and that there was no oil, then later it was corrected to not easy to reach oil, in that oil on land, oil in shallow water, guess what? The industry innovated. They went to deep water. Guess what was deep water? 300, 2,000. They moved to 2,000. Now, 2,500 people are beaches. There are more of us. And we innovate very well. Another reason what we feel is that when there was a financial crash, the oil price went down, then it took ships to go. Then guess what happened? We all thought that oil is small. Oil should be going again. And another thing happened. Geopolitics. The war happened. And now, oil price is stable. And a lot of things happened. When you watch the Dutch Revolution in the early 1900s, when steel was taking over that money, when that combustion engine was taking over that steel, there was all this loss. People were getting jobs, people getting out of jobs. All happened, people innovated, they changed. And then, the energy, see, and the two became fossil fuel. Those same people, sailors and all of them, brought into oil and gas, and we are here today. So the byword here is the byword is don't stand still, move. The byword is network. Byword is for what is happening in the world. I'm telling you, nobody can be with them. I've been in several conferences. We are all searching. Europe is still searching. I am searching for the right way. People tell you, oh, it's wind, solar, and lithium battery. Yes, if lithium battery will get a breakthrough that can store power for days, then you will have something. But guess what will put the power into the lithium battery? breakthrough in nuclear, then I know we are close. Maybe the car will just have this reactor, and the energy that we have properly, and then drive a steam engine in our vehicles. That's what I'm afraid of. Not lithium battery. Because the carbon footprint for lithium battery is outrageous. The mining of it is outrageous. That is not the future. Solar panel, we are in Africa. I love solar. I have solar panels in my house. I have batteries. But the carbon footprint for a solar panel is outrageous. So the key word here is we want to save the environment. And all of us want to do that at an optimal cost. You don't want to transition from a bad fuel, as its name, fossil fuel, to a bad practice. Lithium batteries and solar panel. Where are we going? That's why I'm saying that nobody has a clear-cut answer. But the planet must be saved. So now legislations are coming out. Everything you do should be electric. Good. So offshore, instead of having a gas turbine on each platform, generate the power somewhere and bring the power to the platform or rig. Fine. So, what are we saying? Green hydrogen. That's the word now. Offshore wind. That's the next word. Then green hydrogen. Guess who is going to do the blue, green, and offshore wind? It's us. We are the ones going to build the windmills. We are the ones going to build the green hydrogen. That's so you use gas, natural gas, to generate, to make the hydrogen, and use the hydrogen to produce electricity. Can you guess the inefficiency there? It's dawning on us slowly. And the blue hydrogen, you go and take seawater, hydrolyze it, produce hydrogen. Take the hydrogen somewhere and get ammonia and so forth, fertilizer and so on. Very soon, we'll calculate the carbon footprint of that, and we may say, well, so, I don't want to confuse you, but we are all confused. It's not too clear to us. What I'll tell you is that this industry has what it takes to keep producing energy. And when you watch the multinational, the big ones, they are all becoming Total Energies. BP has all the green around is BP. ExxonMobil is doing something. Everybody is doing one thing or the other just to save the planet, which we all must do. It's imperative. But what is the best way? One thing you also need to watch out for is driverless cars, electric vehicles. Yes, those, should be considered. But see how they develop. But somebody has to produce the energy for all of them. And who is that? You. So there are a lot of questions. But what are the opportunities? Let me just drop it there. There's something called carbon sequestration. So Africa, we are producing a lot of oil, and our reservoirs are depleted. Europe and the rest of the world want to see where the carbon they produce, they can put it, carbon dioxide. Reservoir engineers, G&G people, look at all those old reservoirs and start making a business out of it. Create something so that they can bring carbon from Europe, carbon from America, and you inject. You can use it for, is it secondary or tertiary production of our oil and gas. At the same time, you're solving a problem, you gain carbon credits, you make money. You need to be innovative. The next one, I mentioned blue and green hydrogen. Look at that technology and how it links to oil and gas. Where you generate green and feed your oil and gas platforms and everything. So direct current comes in there. Over long distance, you don't use alternating currents. You prefer to use direct current. You come to the rig, you rectify it again to direct current to use. And the business people, the lawyers, the finance people, the commercial people, the next fuel that will transition into anything is probably gas. Big business for all of you there. We in Africa call gas not the transition fuel, but the fuel of the future. And it's going to take us to 2050 and beyond. So
let's enjoy the confusion and enjoy the ride.
Thank you very much, Victor. I like the way you gave an overview of the entire energy transition. For the subsequent conversation, I think that we would have to focus specifically on Africa and the reality of it being actualized. You spoke about how basically in Africa we tend to focus on the abundant resources that we have, forgetting that these are the resources, the human resources that would actually need to undertake the energy transition. I would like to direct my next question towards Mr. Ben Boache. Basically, the energy transition and net zero as a whole. Let's look at the state of Africa today. Generally, when there are certain scenarios where research hubs will conduct research using, let's say, South Africa and generalize it as a proxy for Africa as a whole. And what this does, it actually limits our projections for whether, in reality, this can actually happen. Do we think that net zero African economy is actually possible?
Thank you very much. Good question, and good morning to everyone. Net zero essentially means that what you're putting into the atmosphere in terms of carbon and what you are saving are par, right? So assuming you are doing 1 ton of carbon today, you want to be able to at least do an equivalent of that in renewable energy to be able to be at par, so that you are sinking what you actually put into the atmosphere. In our context in Africa, if we look at where our carbon comes from, even today, it's not really petroleum. Wood fuels actually put more carbon into the atmosphere in our context than petroleum. So for example, in Ghana, we're doing about almost 48% of our carbon coming from wood fuels, right? So if we're able to replace all our cooking activities with renewable energy, for example, say ethanol, we would have been neutral, carbon neutral. All right, so it is possible, and it's even easier in our context to even achieve that. So sometimes when you hear the projections of 2070, 2060, it makes you want to question what practically we want to do as a people to achieve net zero. Unless you're just focusing on the petroleum side of our emissions. So to answer that is possible. But in the broader context and scheme of energy transition and what it is there for us as Africa, what I want Africa to do really is to take a deep dive into what is happening in the space of energy today, and detach ourselves usually from the emotional thinking that we have oil resources and therefore we want to produce the oil. Fine. If the world and the market dictates that is what is going to happen, you certainly produce the oil. If the demand is out there for it, you certainly produce the oil. And as we're seeing today, I mean, there's demand for oil and therefore production will continue to happen. But what will happen in the next 10, 15 years? That still looks so unpredictable for us to be so confident. To say that oil will still be needed 20 years down the line. That is where the caution comes in. That's where we have to be extremely careful how we interpret that. You look at what is happening in the global scheme of things. Whilst the African companies, national oil companies, are so confident about the future of energy and oil, you look at what is happening in Total, in Shell, in Chevron, and these guys have some scientific approach into analyzing what the future will look like. They will still wish oil is produced, but they are investing into research and development in the renewable space so that when they are caught unawares, they are not left wanting. But that's not what is happening in our context. We are busily doing the talking, and we are aggressively confident about the future of oil. But it's not as certain as it is. So we have to be very cautious in our understanding of what the future of oil looks like, and begin to balance our thinking and our approach into interpreting how the future will look like. I mean, we think that electrification it's not doing much. But guess what? 2022, the world produced 10.3 million electric cars. 10 years back, it would have been maybe 10 pieces or 20 pieces experimenting with that. What that also means is that 10.3 million cars would have been fossil fueled if research and development didn't happen in the RE space. And if you go granular in analyzing that, for example, take one of the most efficient Chinese brand, for example, from BYD, giving you 100 kilowatt battery pack, 730-mile range, right? If I bring that to Ghana today, and I power that, even whether the power is coming from gas, I'm going to pay, according to my brother here, I'm going to pay about 200 cedis to charge that electric car, right? 730-mile range. If I use petrol in my car, I'm going to pay about 6 times that to fuel my car to be able to achieve that. So efficiency has significantly improved. So much less oil is required for me to move from one point to the other. These are the realities that we are faced with. And we have to sink that in to see how we can be part of the conversation about how do we innovate to be part of the future of energy. And that is really crucial. It may not be directly oil and gas, but even if oil is powering the electric vehicles, how do you integrate that so that the engineers you are training to be part of the oil side can also think through the value chain, because now electrification is part of the value chain, all right? So that we are broadening our scope of understanding of what is happening in this space and taking advantage of that. And that also calls on government, business to be part of the innovation and research space on how that integration actually happens. We're actually sleeping. You go to the Department of Energy's website in the US, and you see the kind of calls for proposals on research that they are funding. And you ask yourself, what is the Ministry of Energy in Ghana, Ministry of Energy in Nigeria, Ministry of Energy in Kenya, Uganda doing? They're sleeping. It's all procurement-based ministries. They are not researching, they are not innovating, they are not investing in the young ones like you, who I'm happy to see to be part of this conversation. All right? There is no research funds in the ministries empowering the young ones, because you are the ones who can think. It's not my turn at this point to now go to the lab and start thinking on what to do. You are the ones who are supposed to start innovating and researching, spending the time you have now, even before you marry, in the lab. All right? To really think about what the future should look like. What are we doing? The solar panels that are coming in, we are importing them whilst we are making a noise. Right? But we have the sun here almost 12 hours a day. People in Holland wake up sometimes, the sun is not up, they go and sleep and come back to research the next day. But we are not researching. We are not thinking the future. So that is really the conversation. What can we contribute to that space of innovation and energy for the future? If we don't do that, and we are caught unawares without knowing exactly what the future throws at us tomorrow, we can only hope that oil remains as relevant for the long haul as we want. But if you're not looking at what is happening on the other side in terms of innovation and research, you may only be deceiving yourself that you are actually doing what will keep you for the long term. So I think
absolutely. I mean, you've touched on very key points, especially in relation to the policy aspect and what our Ministry of Education, Ministry of Energy is actually doing. And we would come to that discussion probably when we get to Mr. From the Petroleum Commission. I think we will get there and be able to touch more on what regulatory point of view needs to be done. But speaking of confusion in this energy transition net zero conversation, I think it's very obvious that as a continent that still heavily depends on oil and gas, we as the young professionals and students need to do a lot more than just sitting in the classroom, probably on our own, take on independent research programs like you mentioned. I'd like us to delve the conversation to what the energy transition is, as to whether it's a risk or an opportunity, and where the key areas need to be focused on. So, Mr. David Ampofor, do you think that the energy transition is a risk or an opportunity for young professionals that are here today?
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. It's such a pleasure to be here. Every time I have a chance to be with young people, I know it's a great opportunity. You know, strictly speaking, I should be listening to you and not the other way around. You guys are dealing with what do you call it? Chat GPT. It gives you all the answers. It wasn't like that for us. Me, I grew up, the games I used to play was to climb trees. You guys sit around all day with everything at your disposal. So I want you to think very hard. The real word is innovation, research. You heard both speakers. Let me just say very quickly what I represent so that I can put my conversation, my comments into context. I represent the business, the industry, the explore for oil and the companies that produce oil. There are policy makers and there's a whole range of other people. I want to be very clear what I said. I represent those who produce oil, who explore for oil, who develop and produce oil. So you would imagine that oil and gas, which is where our bread and butter comes from, would be important. But even for us, we know that we will be fooling ourselves if we think it will be here forever. Energy transition. I've noticed that now we you know what we do? We've added something. We call it a just transition. Because there is a concern. But we must think through it very carefully. We are part of the world. This is not the first time there's an energy transition. History has many other transitions. It will happen, whether we like it or not. As to when it will happen, je ne sais pas, I do not know. But the fact still remains that even that, if you begin to do your work well, and I like the point you made, focus on the data, focus on the facts, look at the trends, and predict on that basis. Do not be emotional. Do not be desperate to keep your corner burning. There may be other sources of fire. In the end, we are all looking for energy for development. That is what we are looking for. You are young. You come at a certain time. And I know that you might have concerns. But the way is not to go about it, to pretend it's not there just because you are studying petroleum. So you want petroleum to be around for 100 years? Is that what you think? Is that how you want to approach it? Why is it that China does so much pollution and is so big when it comes to renewable? This is the way to look at these things. So, I think that as we speak about the energy transition, we must understand that it appears to mean different things to different people. We agree at this point that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I would imagine that even in Africa, even as we sit here together, whilst the Ghanaian might say that I only just started producing it 15 years ago, I'm not about to ignore it. The Nigerians have have been producing it much longer. Do we have a common position? Or do we not? Is there such a thing as a collective African position? Can we come together? Is there something like that? We talked about resource, finance. But this business is a lot of money. If you have the money, fine. Go ahead and say that you will do it forever. But if the money comes from somebody and that person is no longer interested, the dynamic changes. So let's be realistic about these things. We cannot be emotional about them at all. Hard facts, data, study, observing, mixing, looking at the trends, seeing what is happening, predicting on the basis of something. That is what we must do. What I look forward to is when I meet petroleum people and they spend half an hour talking about renewable energy. Then I will know something is happening. Because it is not either or at this stage. There are just some hard realities that we face. So we are, the concern, when I hear, for example, and it's quite a strange position. I don't know why we sometimes say this. Nobody has forced anybody to do anything. Sometimes we hear, we have just found our thing and now they are telling us not to use it. Who is telling you? Why are you so concerned about what somebody is telling you to do or not do? Why don't you focus on what you want to do? Is it so important to be forever talking about some people don't want you to do? Which people? I listen to it and I wonder. They say we shouldn't do this. We are not. That's not the way to go about it. Think clearly about yourselves, where you fit in the scheme of things. Ask yourself what it is that you can do. My answer to your question is that it's both. You ask me whether it's the opportunity or in many ways at this stage it is both. Like most things in life, isn't it? It's not a binary thing. Most things in life are like that. Don't be confused. You are young people. Where you see good, you see bad. Where you see bad, you see good. That is the way things are. The nuances. Think hard about what you can do. And stop relying on old folks like me. I beg you, stop it. I need to rely on you. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Awesome. I think let's dive into the regulatory point of view. And Mr. Kweku Boateng, our continent is immersed with several IOCs. In Ghana, for instance, majority of the oil and gas companies are international companies. And there are certain countries where regulators would mandate oil and gas companies to start implementing, energy transition or decarbonization policies, whether it is through reducing greenhouse gas emissions or zero flaring policies. I'd like to know from your perspective, what initiatives has the upstream regulatory petroleum commission, for instance, taken to encourage operators so that they can sort of speed up this energy transition policy?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I think I've greeted my colleague panelists. As the world moves towards zero carbon future, there have been a growing concern as to how oil and gas companies may adapt to this change. What strategies they have in place to ensure that we have smooth energy transition. And this has to be taken in line with the policy of the host government. In Ghana, Petroleum Commission, as a regulator of the upstream industry, has a mandate to ensure that government policy in the oil and gas are implemented and enforced. Let me start with the policy level at the government, and I'll come to what the Commission will do in the area of energy transition. The Ghana government has made it very clear at various fora, at the COP27, COP29, that Ghana is committed to the global effort to achieve zero emissions. Indeed, government set up Energy Transition Committee that came up with Energy Transition Framework, which provide a guiding principles for Ghana to achieve the target of zero carbon emission by 2070. And I think Ben mentioned, was quite frustrated that to the extent a lot of these policies don't get implemented. Certainly when government ministry make a policy, it's up to the agencies, being the Petroleum Commission, Energy Commission, my friend from PRC, through that tariff guidelines, to ensure that these policies are implemented. So I'll put the responsibility on various energy agencies, energy sector, to ensure that the guiding principles outlined in the National Energy Transition Framework are implemented. Now, back to your question as to what the Petroleum Commission as a regulator is doing or can do to ensure that we achieve a smooth transition framework. Now, the starting point is the government energy transition framework, which I've just mentioned. Now, Petroleum Commission, if you look at the energy transition framework of Ghana, the target is to move the country towards a greener energy. However, government have made it very clear about two issues. One, we are committed to achieve zero energy emission target. But at the same time, I think as my friend David mentioned, we want a just energy transition. And what do you mean by just energy transition? Ghana, like any other African countries, want to ensure that the path towards energy transition will not leave us worse off. One, we must exploit responsibly and environmentally benign manner all nature-given petroleum resources. We must also ensure that in the process towards energy transition, we will not compromise energy security, energy affordability, and energy reliability. So these are the guiding principles in our National Energy Transition Framework. Now, when it comes to the Commission, we have realized that we are in oil and gas industry. We regulate petroleum industry. And when you look broadly, the intentions of energy transition is eventually eliminate or minimize utilization of fossil fuels in production of power as a fuel for vehicles, etc. And we ask ourselves, if the oil and gas is phased out completely, then what business do we have as a commission? There will be no need to have a commission, in the sense there will be no industry to regulate. So what we have decided that we have taken out from the National Energy Transition Framework and currently preparing upstream petroleum transition framework. And the key tenet of that policy, which is still in the draft form, is to how do you ensure a prudent, environmentally sustainable exploitation of oil and gas in Ghana so that you don't leave our resources stranded. So that's the first thing that the commission is doing. Now, when it comes to the oil and gas companies, the commission has engaged companies, especially those in oil field operations, how to, one, ensure that we integrate low carbon technologies in our operations. Let me mention some few examples that we are undertaking. There's one company, Jensen Production Company, who is the operator of one of the FPSOs in all the field. Jensen has submitted the proposal to the commission on CCUs, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, as to how do we capture carbon from operations and just put it back to some of this the reservoir to minimize the emissions. Now, it's on the surface, it's very good proposal to help us to minimize the emission. But the question is, this technology costs money. Once they implement it, they need to recover the cost. Are you going to allow the cost of implementation of such technology be cost oil that they will take it from petroleum revenues? We need to establish two things. One, whether the end result of the implementation of this technology can be pushed by Ghana as meeting our commitment towards global target of zero emission, and whether we can really measure the outcome of such technology before the government can take decision as to whether we will allow them to implement it and recover the cost. I think my boss, Theo, probably when you also talk, you can also tell us what MODEC, if they have any plan on such. So that is there. Beyond that, we have the same Jensen. We are encouraging the upstream companies to undertake research and development with the academia, the universities and research institutions, as to how you can do research locally to improve operations on the field and minimize emission. Now, Jensen has a proposal called zero carbon emission technology project, which is being undertaken in collaboration with KNUST, University of Technology, the Petronas University of Technology in Malaysia, and the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. And they have submitted a proposal to us, and the agency is going to finance it completely. Now, the objective of that R&D project is to undertake comprehensive assessment of all greenhouse emissions in Ghana and harmonize all emission data into an accessible interactive database. They also intend to undertake assessment of all oil and gas emissions so that they will come up with a strategy as to how we can mitigate carbon emissions in the oil and gas project. So that's it there. We also have noted that the energy transition is bringing its challenges to local companies. Our indigenous companies that are participating in oil and gas must also cope with the challenges of energy transition. Now, the upstream operators, the main operators, contractors, Talo, ENI, and others, are now coming out of what they call ESG reporting as part of their tender requirements, that they want local companies to comply with the ESG reporting requirements. This means that you need to really undertake training for our local companies to be able to cope with the existing challenges. The upstream companies, the Commission is also collaborating with some of them to implement projects that will not only reduce the emissions in the oil field, but also undertake carbon capture projects. For instance, Talo, at the global level, is now implementing a project with Forestry Commission to plant trees, to undertake afforestation and reforestation in some of the depleted forests. The aim is that by doing that, we are able to capture some of the greenhouse gases that are being emitted. Victor mentioned natural gas. Natural gas, we consider natural gas as effective fuel in the transition era. Natural gas projects traditionally have been very challenging. What we have been discussing, the Minister tasked the Commission to come out with a proposed new fiscal arrangement to encourage investment in the sector. What we have proposed, among other things, is to recommend a favorable or more generous fiscal regime for production and utilization of natural gas. So these are some of the things that we are doing. But I want to come to, I don't know whether you come to the human resource side later on also.
You can just touch on it briefly.
Okay. Yeah. On the human resource side, we also noticed that energy transition poses challenges to employment and training. I think as some of these young people, some of you are studying petroleum-related courses, there's a serious threat to jobs in traditional oil and gas industry as we transition. At the same time, there are also opportunities. For instance, a study that was done recently by this UK university, or this popular university that people go and study oil and gas.
Imperial?
Not Imperial. It's Scotland. The Scottish company. No, not Dundee. Oh. Robert Gordon. Thank you. They estimated that investment in energy transition projects from now to 2030 will be about $174 billion. Pounds, sorry. And between now and 2050, over 1.4 billion jobs will be created in energy transition-related activities, which means that we need to invest in transferable skills to make sure that people that are in the traditional oil and gas industry will be able to transfer their knowledge and skill to the other areas. And the good thing is that oil and gas industry is at the forefront of technology development for the past century. And most of the skills in the oil and gas industry can be applied to other sectors. For instance, petroleum engineers, their skills can easily be applied to geothermal activities. Those chemical engineers in refineries can be retrained quickly to apply their skills in clean energies and production of hydrogen. Offshore oil field activities, those skills can be applied in the offshore wind energy and other clean energy sources. So the good thing about the upstream sector is that the skills we have over there can be applicable. It is in that direction that the Petroleum Commission, under the Accelerated Oil and Gas Development, we are moving to phase 3 of the AOGC project, whereby we are putting emphasis on transferable skills from oil and gas to support the cleaner energy. And lastly, I will mention that the government intends, as I said, is not for us to leave our oil and gas resources being on ground. We want to leverage revenues from oil and gas to develop the cleaner energy and also build local capacity so that our indigenous companies and our young professionals will be able to adapt and cope with the challenges of energy transition.
Thank you. I think the key thing you mentioned in your submission is the transferable skills. We have a lot of our students here who are currently doing petroleum geoscience, petroleum engineers, but the problem is whether they are actually aware that their skills can be used in different aspects of the industry. And I think probably when we get to the Q&A part of the segment, you let us know how knowledgeable you are of your transferable skills. I'm going to go to the financial aspects of the energy transition. Basically, there's policy, companies, government agencies, private entities. All of that needs a financial implication. So I'm going to go directly to Dr. Ishmael. What are the financial implications of the energy transition? Our students that are here need to be reskilled. Who bears the cost for financing human resource here?
Is it on? Okay. Thank you and good morning. Normally when you are with your seniors on a panel, you have to speak last and summarize what they say. So I don't know why they skipped Uncle Tio and came to me. So to talk about the finances, I think there are two fundamental things we have to look at first. The first one is the source of where is the carbon coming from. And the second one is what are we transitioning from. So when it comes to the first one, when you look at Africa, across Africa, I think the sources of this carbon, we have agriculture, we have land use and forestry. These are the three largest. But even if you want to add energy, in energy, what are we transitioning from? You are transitioning from energy poverty. So you go to Liberia, you go to some of these countries, apart from the regional capital, they don't have electricity. So they are transitioning from nothing to something. So how do you do it? So we all have roles to play, and I will touch on the finances. So first of all, our preoccupation is one, to see the transition more like as a holistic goal. We're not just focusing on energy. If we achieve net zero in energy and agriculture is still polluting, we've not done much because energy is not the major contributor. Then when you come to, again, energy sector, if you have the solar, the wind, and all these ones, and people still do not have access to energy, it doesn't mean anything. So we need to look at, one, how we ensure we have energy access. And because those places we don't have at all, in Ghana, land access rate is about 86%. There are places we don't have electricity. Or maybe going forward, how do you use off-grid solutions instead of extending the grid? So you do maybe solar off-grid and others to support them. Recently, PURC published the net metering guidelines that even if you are a consumer and you have solar and they give you a certain special meter and you generate more than what you need, you can actually credit the grid with the rest of the power you produce. So this can help. But how do you fund them? So let me talk about some of the funding sources. So elsewhere, we've heard about carbon tax. So carbon tax often is levied on petroleum products. So oil and others, they put tax on them. The essence of carbon tax is to elicit some form of behavioral change. Oil price will increase. So because it will increase, people will reduce their consumption. So that's the first point. We have the carbon trading. We've heard about the green bonds. We've heard about even international finance and all those things we can apply for. International finance companies pledge more than $10 billion to Africa, about more than $100 billion to Africa. Over 10 years ago, we've not gotten about 5% of that. When you talk about carbon tax, as soon as you tax, what it means is that because everybody takes car, it will make the poor poorer. It will increase petroleum products. But in Africa, that is even not the challenge. The challenge is what we use the money for. So it is called carbon tax because when you raise that money, you should invest in environmentally sustainable sources so that we can achieve the transition. But we have so many taxes in Ghana, name specific taxes that are not used for what they were meant for. So again, there should be systems. So first, yes, the private sector has a role. Let us invest Those areas we don't have electricity, the off-grid, mini-grid, that is good. Individuals have roles. So, for instance, investing in your own solar and others, getting a meter, and if you generate more, you can give then the government too has a role. So in Ghana, in most African countries, though South Africa has started, carbon tax will be very difficult. One, because we may not use it for what it is intended for. So that is very, very significant. International finance institutions will pledge, the money may not come. So what it means is that as a government, we need to take carbon energy transition as an agenda and make deliberate steps. So it is not happening and let us leave it to God attitude that when it gets to us, maybe we can take advantage. No, we need to, and that is good. We have the Energy Transition Plan 2070. But we've had plans like that before. And I'm very happy Mr. Kokubuatin said this time the agencies are going to do that. But we need to put money aside for investment. We need to put money aside for research. For data, when we speak here, every figure any of us will quote is a research somebody did outside Africa. We have top universities in Ghana. We have them in Africa. But if we want to quote, we'll quote IEA, we'll quote Aberdeen, University of Cambridge. Why? So we need to tell our story, do our own research. What funding source will be better for our transition? How much will it cost the African to transition? And where can we get? If we don't invest in data, invest in our own people. Fortunately, I'm one of you. I don't have gray. So we need to invest in them. And again, you also have to invest in yourselves. You have access to internet. So you don't spend 5 hours on Instagram. You search, you go to data sources and you search. These are research questions you can actually also start looking into yourself. And we all have responsibility. If we know how much it will cost us and where we can get the money from, I think we can talk about the funding. But to now, we don't know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I saved the best for the last, and that's going to wrap up the panel discussion. And then we open the floor to you for about 10, 15 minutes Q&A, and then we take closer remarks from our speakers. So, Mr. Theophilus, I mean, you have 3 decades of experience in the upstream industry, and it's safe to say that you've seen quite a lot. From an industry that has evolved and now is experiencing another evolution. Can you share which areas our students should be focused on in terms of the energy transition for specifically to Africa? Where should they be drawing their attention to for the next couple of years?
Hello. Hi, good morning, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here. Very familiar faces in the industry, and I'm delighted today to see a number of young students who are very hungry for knowledge about the energy transition. Let me start by saying that currently, the energy transition is no more an idea or a discussion, but it's a global imperative, okay? We can't wish it away. As we speak today, about 192 countries have already ratified the Paris Convention, including the EU as well. So the train is out of the station, whether you like it or not. The point is, major and very ambitious targets are being made. For me, some of them over-ambitious. We have the Paris group looking at about 45% reduction by, say, 2030 and about net zero in 2050. But whilst all this is going on, what is interesting to note is that countries, companies, financiers are structuring their own solutions to benefit them. And so it's not a question of whether you want to wish it away or whether it's a risk or it's an opportunity. Every company, every country must craft its own solutions to be able to survive in this. I mean, isn't it interesting that the U.S. a few weeks ago granted permission for over a $3 billion project of new drilling to be done in Alaska? Isn't it interesting that British Petroleum is acquiring its partners 27% interest in the Cyprus gas project? Now, it is not a question of whether you are walking away from petroleum or whether you are just embracing. The thing is, how do you survive? And it's very, very important that you understand your imperative. Now, you talk about Ghana, for example, and I hear people who are very ambitious about we getting rid of everything, hydrocarbons, to jump into solar and all that. I have a different view, and the point is that this is a country that historically, our energy mix has been very carbon friendly. I mean, for those who know a bit about Ghana and energy, we started by a purely hydro-based powering base, and we were good enough to even support a whole sub-region. When it got to a point where our hydro resources were not enough for us, we went solar. But we went gas-fired thermal. And very rapidly, we had about somewhere in the region of about 50-50 in terms of the energy mix between hydro and gas-fired thermal plants. There is a great opportunity for us to participate in the energy transition discussion, the whole effort, without necessarily changing drastically our energy mix. Now, if you look at our carbon contributions in this country, as Ben said a moment ago, I mean, between biomass and transportation, we have huge emissions in that area. And if you talk about transportation, you talk about the big cities in Ghana, Accra, Tema, Kumasi, Takoradi, etc. I mean, these cities are gridlocked most part of the time. And being able to even design intelligent traffic systems to ease this traffic is a huge way of decarbonizing our environment without suddenly changing all our buses to electric or whatever. Okay? Now you talk about biomass, and he spoke about it as well. I mean, we still have a huge percentage of this country where people use charcoal and firewood. And if we're really concerned about making a conversion in that space, the solutions are there. I mean, I was part of a program a couple of decades ago in Ghana where GMPC, where I used to work, championed the LPG, the liquefied petroleum gas campaign. And the project was so successful at a point we had to begin to be importing gas in the country. So there is the possibility of a shift in that area, but there are real concerns. I mean, LPG is too expensive, for example, in Ghana. So if we need to think about a tariff regime in that area, there's a lot we can also achieve there. Now, whilst we're saying all this, it does not mean that we think there are other things to do, so we're not moving in that direction. There's a lot to do. I mean, this is a country where we have abundance of solar. The African continent has 60% of the world's solar potential. But in terms of contribution from solar, it is 1%. That is obviously a huge opportunity. And in understanding what the world is looking out for, this is an avenue for partnerships, for research, for investment in the area of solar. And I'm glad my colleague did mention, I mean, for the young people today, I have said many times that the person sitting in Washington and the person sitting in Accra, all have access to the internet. The thing is, what percentage of your time on the net is used for productive sources? You can research into a lot of these areas to find out what topics today have global attention and move into that space. Talking about this, I work for a company called MODEC, and what we do is we build offshore solutions. And most people know MODEC for building FPSOs, floating production, storage, offloading equipment. So if there is a company to find itself very stranded in this whole thing, MODEC should be the company. We should be going now screaming and say it is not fair and all that. But hey, as one of my contributors said a moment ago, where is fairness? The thing is to think of a solution, okay? What have we done in MODEC, for example? because of our dominance offshore, I mean, in Ghana, there are 3 FPSOs, and I'm glad to say 2 of them were built by MODEC. So that tells you about our global dominance in that area. What we have done is that we are collaborating with great institutions and companies around the world to use what we call TLPs. For those who are familiar with this, TLP means tension leg platforms. So when you're developing in very deep water, you are either using an FPSO or you are using an FSO, which is floating storage and offloading, or you are using a TLP or a semi-sub. Now, we are building these TLPs and using them as a platform for mounting very powerful wind turbines in the strong wind corridors around the world. And we've gone past the concept stage. Some trials have been done, and the results are phenomenal. So we are actually looking about harvesting these huge wind potential opportunities and bringing them onshore. So instead of using hydrocarbon resources to generate power, we are using wind, which is in abundance and free out there. So for me, it's the energy transition is more of an opportunity, and as I said from the very beginning, nations, companies, etc., must craft their own solutions to see how they can benefit from that. I mean, we all know that South Africa has managed to get a 1 billion rand facility into alternative source of energy. And the thing is to understand what the world is looking for. The sun is there, the forest opportunity is there, and I see this more of great opportunities than challenge. And for young people today, we have some very young engineers here from MODEC with us. They come from varied backgrounds, and today they are part of the MODEC solution. Any problem or challenge at all in terms of conversions. And so pick it up, and you can be a winner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Theophilus Eshwing. I think we are going to go into the Q&A session. We'll take 3 questions from the audience, and what I want you to do is to direct your question towards one speaker. So whoever doesn't get a question, they are going to give us their closing remarks. Is that fair? Okay, so I actually have a personal question I'm going to direct towards Mr. Victor Sunuata. So while you get your questions ready, just come towards the stage and queue here. 3 of you, 3 questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'm going to call you. Okay, so 1. Next person. 2. Okay, 1 more. A lady. Thank you. All right. So my first question is a one I've thought about for a very long time. We have over thousands of students being churned out from the universities every single year. Obviously, there is a gap between academia and industry as to how we can absorb all of these thousands of students into the universities. You go abroad, Europe for instance, there are universities that are actually cutting out purely petroleum engineering courses. Think that our universities are positioned in to meet Africa's energy transition.
Thank you, moderator. In Africa, as has been mentioned here, we, especially by Doc from PURC, we are even yet to start using energy. We are energy poor in terms of usage. However, we have plenty sources of energy in Africa. How do we harness this energy and use it for our economic growth and development? Now, it's a question that we need to answer. I'll give a good example to your question of what we do in GMPC. We have been overwhelmed with the number of students coming out with doing, what do you call it, petroleum engineering, petroleum science, and a few energy programs. And what we've done is that during the holidays, we take almost up to 500 students. And they come, some come for 2 weeks, some come for 1 month. It's just to expose the students to what we do, what the energy is all about. Is it the most efficient way? No. But the thing I found, which is profound to me, and please, young people, congratulate yourselves. About 70% of the people who come there, students who come there, are hungry to learn. So when they do their presentation at the end of their 2 weeks or 1 month, the level of knowledge they've acquired is astounding. So that's, again, what gives me hope. Then on the next level, national service. National service, I'm sure we have about 250 people doing that, students doing national service with GMPC. And then thirdly, we do some employment, which is a bit challenge because we can just take so many people. And I guess it's the same in all the petroleum-related organizations in Ghana. Now, one of the things that the curricula that the schools needs to look at is, for example, is it you or Doc said, transfer of skill sets, and Kuku brought into mention, everybody mentioned it. How can a G&G person be relevant in the next 5, 10, 20 years? That is key, and that is that's a research that the schools must do. Because as everybody is saying, transition is here. And transition is not here because some people say we should do it. The planet needs it. The emissions are killing the planet. So we need to pull back. So although I'm in petroleum, we need to do it. At what cost or how do we do it is the debate. So, for example, how do you use big data and artificial intelligence? It's what do we call that in chat PT. How do you use all these new innovations at your fingertips to create value? So that if you're in petroleum industry, you create value such that the earth is saved. If academia can find that, research in those areas, even supply chain, and so on, carbon trading, decarbonization, let's work on those areas and then put them as part of the curricula. Then you see that we train people who are well-rounded, maybe general, but they're nimble. They can move in and out of transition and bring some more value to Ghana and also to Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the Q&A session has officially begun. You tell us your name, your school, and country.
I start.
My name is David Lawson from Eugene, University of Ghana, from Ghana. And please, this question is directed to Mr. Ben. I wanted to ask, why do you think that the time estimation for zero carbon emission is so far away? And do you think that the stakeholders involved are actually really committed and ready to make the necessary changes for us to reach zero carbon emission? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just summarize the question. She's asking, do we think that the time frame for our targets for net zero is far away? Am I correct? Okay, yeah.
I thought we were taking the questions, sorry. Yes. So, for me, being in the space and what I've seen done to arrive at these timings is just a political cook story, right? The kind of analytical work that I expect to go into deciding some of these time frames, I don't see them done in our context, not just Ghana. Nigeria just got a consultant from the US to do this, and it was produced for them. Ghana got some few people in the room and it was done. And they presented to us, call it engagement. And then when it was presented here in the University of Ghana, you had professors asking questions. So then your question then is, were they engaged even before the document was produced? Right? So that is really the problem. How did we arrive at that time frame? Was it purely scientific, or is just some few people modeling it in the room? Because this is the conversation that you need to even have with a poor person in the village. Because in our context, when you're talking about transition, you're talking about even the poorest of the poor, how they also come along. And how do you provide an alternative that prevents chopping down the tree for cooking, for them to be able to switch, right? So it's a deeper conversation that we need to have to be able to arrive at a timeline. We will not be able to do a very thorough work without doing that kind of engagement and work. And also, I mean, we're talking about how businesses are behaving, how governments are behaving. I'm not a climate scientist, right? But from all the conversations that I see happening, looking at what business is doing, what governments are doing, it's rather taking an economic dimension than pure climate conversation. So people are looking at how do they position themselves for the future of energy. And that is why, as was said, China is investing heavily, even though they are wearing masks from pollution. They're investing heavily in renewable because they want to be part of the future. They want to sell you the panel. They want to sell you the batteries. They want to sell you the cable. All right? That is the economic dimension, and that's how they see it. So they have sat down to really program themselves to be part of that future. The battery technologies that are coming, CTL and BYD now thinking about sodium batteries. And they are prototyping it this year and putting it in the cars. So if you had lithium deposits and the governments were delivering speeches, forget about it. All right? From Accra to anywhere midpoint close to Kumasi. You have to pick it from Kumasi and bring it back. So there's a town like Konongo, which is before Kumasi. Product will have to pass through Konongo and go and store in Kumasi before you can go and pick it from Kumasi. And then they tax you to bring it back. All right? And that is what policy does, to create opportunity for politicians. So as young people, I mean, Thursday I was in New York with academics trying to discuss, innovations that are happening in universities, and some of the things that they were talking about doing in their labs, it was like science fiction. All right? And I'm thinking, what can an African university do to be able to innovate and create the kind of research outputs that these guys are into? So we have to demand for accountability and demand that our resources are invested properly. We're talking about investment. When we discovered oil in Ghana, the framers of our laws decided that investment from oil into energy should go into new forms of energy. That is innovation, to invest in new forms of energy so that you are diversifying your resources from the oil sector into new forms of energy. Not a single penny has been spent in innovation. So when they send the money to Ministry of Energy, they decide to buy lamps and distribute, buy procurement, essentially. Nobody's doing research. All right? So that is the kind of future politicians are building for you. Vote, but don't go and chase after their vehicles and go and kill yourself. Demand accountability for your future. I'm sure if we made $1,000 or 10,000 cedis available every month or a quarter to some students, you will sleep in the lab to generate knowledge. You can't get anybody to take $1,000 to sleep in a lab in the US. So it tells you that research is cheaper in our context. But we are not, and that's what we are trying to do, to go beyond what government can do and trying to partner universities. So we recently signed an MOU with UNER to see how we can partner them to get students to start thinking. And maybe we'll go to the private sector to see how they can also come in to support thinking, really. Otherwise, we will just be there and nothing will happen. Who would have thought that South Africa today will be shedding load? It's because the speeches are being delivered and actions are not being taken. And that is the kind of governments we have. Our thinking is just to deliver the speech and the actions will not follow. So when they are promising you the jobs, you have to think deeper, analyze the trends, and see where you can position yourself. I don't have the time and space to really keep talking, but the reality of the problems that were mentioned about training and universities generating a lot of courses, it is really because they also find an economic opportunity. Because when you're training people in the oil and gas space, parents are willing to pay. So why don't they generate the courses and train you, even though you may not get a job in that space? So all the universities are replicating the courses, and they are all training petroleum engineers, petroleum economists, and the rest of it. But we have to go beyond that. And we have done that before. We train people in agriculture, and they are in the banks. All right? Tell us. They are not reforming the agricultural sector of our country. But we have to go beyond that with people and young people who demand accountability and ensure that $10 billion, $20 billion of national budget is so much money not to have a research fund in that and still complain that you are a poor country. But you are spending. You're spending money.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boachi. Our second question.
Yes, thank
Your
you.
name and school, and then who you're directed to.
I think I'll direct it to him. And by the way, 1,000 is too much. 500 is enough for us to sleep in the lab, to do those things, really. My name is Mugambe Victor. I'm from Barrow University of Science and Technology, from the Pearl of Africa, Uganda, and I'm glad to be here. 90% of my questions have been answered while I was here. Like, they have talked about them, but probably to go a little bit higher, you have talked about the politics. I think geopolitics, in the sense, to me and to very many people, think that this whole circus of climate change, I'm near in the making, so I believe it is real. But very many people, including the former president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, don't really believe that we are having a climate disaster anytime soon. So in terms of geopolitics, most people think that because of the dwindling resources in Europe and North America, and more resources in these developing countries just got 6.5 billion barrels of crude oil recently, which are going to be coming out of the ground. So is there a sense of trying to prevent such from being abandoned? Maybe a balance of power. Finally, as I finish, I know you want to take the mic away. Maybe to my friends, the point I've always thought about, and it's clear. Climate change may not be the issue, but the energy transition may come in terms of the alternatives. I believe in hydrogen. I believe hydrogen is the future.
Let's go straight to the question.
The question is, okay, it is half a question, but it's clear like this. The energy, the Stone Age did not end because stones were done. No. It ended because a better alternative came. I believe that hydrogen, personally, is the alternative we need. And if invested in, like professors here have been saying, if we invest more in it, we can really be able to move to a better world and a better future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think that wasn't a question. It was more of a contribution.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So thank you very much for that. We'll take the last question.
Hello, good morning. My name is Enoch Che. I'm from KNUST. I actually want to stand in the shoes of everyone here and thank you guys very much because we've actually learned a lot and we are going to leave this room with a whole lot of information that we entered without knowing. My question is directed to Mr. David Ampofo. So I can actually see that you have the zeal for innovation because when you started, the first thing that you mentioned was ChatGPT. That was actually the first thing that you mentioned. And so my question is, I want to come down to reality because it's nice talking about all these innovations and stuff, but we are in this part of the world. We are not in the western part of the world. We are in Africa. Certain things, we can talk